Thank you very much for joining us today for the ISAP 2025 online thematic track session, National Implementation and Current Status of Nature-Based Solutions to Address Climate Change Issues. Before we start the session, we have a few housekeeping items to share. For today's session, we have simultaneous interpretation service available in Japanese and English, mainly for audience members participating from overseas. Please click on the interpretation icon in the meeting control and select the language of your choice. We also ask participants other than authorized stakeholders of this session to refrain from taking video and audio recordings as well as screenshots. After you exit the Zoom meeting, you will see a survey screen. We would appreciate if you could help us by giving us your feedback after the session. And now we will start today's session on national implementation and current status of nature-based solutions to address climate change issues. In opening the session, I would like to turn the microphone over to Fukuyama Keiichi, Executive Director, Environmental Restoration and Conservation Agency. Good afternoon, I'm Fukuyama from the Environmental Restoration and Conservation Agency, ERCA. I'd first like to give a brief introduction of ERCA. ERCA is an administrative agency under the Ministry of the Environment of Japan, and it works on various activities such as providing compensation for sufferers of health hazards caused by pollution, supporting private organizations working on environmental conservation through a grant, provision of medical expenses and other relief benefits to sufferers of asbestos-related disease. Among those activities are Environmental Research and Technology Development Fund, promotes environmental research and technology development that contributes to environmental policies, allocating approximately 5 billion yen per year to researchers. We provide funding to research, contributing to climate change measures and biodiversity conservation, technologies that aim for efficient collection and recycling of resources, and various other research and technology development projects. And the outcomes are reflected into Japan's environmental policies. In today's ISAP 2025 online thematic track session, we focus on nature-based solutions at NBS and introduce some of the research project outcomes from the Environmental Research and Technology Development Fund. NBS offers an effective approach not only for climate change and biodiversity loss, but also for complex challenges including strengthening local resilience, promoting social and economic development, and improving health and welfare. Meanwhile, there are still several issues to solve on nature-based solutions, such as implementations to the regions of various geographical backgrounds, evaluation methodology frameworks, and institution building and fundraising. For today's session, we have invited experts who have been working on solving these issues, and they will share the latest findings from their research on nature-based solutions, such as impact of Japan's renewable energy deployment on biodiversity, relation to various disaster risks, and nature-based solutions in Pacific Island states and in Japan. After lectures, we have a panel discussion where we hope to explore issues and possibilities in nature-based solution implementation inside and outside of Japan, and work together to think of future directions. We hope participants will actively take part in the discussions through the Q&A session. So looking forward to hearing the talks today. Thank you.
So we would like to start the lectures, and questions and answers regarding the lectures will be answered by the presenters in a panel discussion after the 3 lectures. And viewers can ask questions using the QA function. So please go to the tab All Panelists and state who your question is directed to and submit your question. If you do not mind, please include your name and affiliation. Thank you so much. And please note that due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer all questions. First, we will receive a lecture from Dr. Osamu Saito of IGES, entitled Towards Optimization of Renewable Energy Deployments for Nature-Based Solution. Dr. Saito, please. Thank you very much for having me, and this is Saito from IGES. So, I would like to start without ado. So, my expertise is ecology and environmental policy. So these days, this is about sustainability science and sustainability infrastructure is what it is called as a study. And so it is about the ecological services and quantifying the nature's blessings. And those are the topics that I research on. So I would like to first of all introduce you in the first half about the international organization IPBES, IPBES. And so this is the IPCC version of the bio-responsibility. Please think of that. And in the English name, it is the platform regarding intergovernmental platform. So, likely as IPCC, they do the scientific evaluation assessment and summarize it into a report. The latest report, one of them is called a Nexus Assessment Report. In December 2024, in Namibia, IPBES general meeting was held and it was adopted. And the writers is called CEL, Coordinating Lead Auditors, and I am one of the coordinating lead authors, so one of the 27 authors. And we took about 3 years in order to write and summarize this assessment report. And over 6,500 scientific literature, and not only the literature, but we also looked in and dived into other literatures and reviewed them. And based on the reviewing, we have been writing the reporting. So more than 100 people, near 200 people, 200 researchers gathered from all around the world have been engaged in order to make this report. And we talk about nexus here. What I mean is, it is about climate change and biodiversity, of course, and water, food, and health. So all these 5 elements are called the 5 elements of nexus. And these are all intertwined and are not separable. And with that, causing various problems. And we are losing the biodiversity too. It's not only one element that is making a loss, but it is related to various elements. For instance, food production, when there is going to be an expansion of securing the food, then there could be some cutting of the forestry, and that could be leading to the degradation of the nature. So biodiversity and water too, regarding the quality of the water and the quantity of the water is essential for the aquatic plants and animals and living creatures. Therefore, it is all intertwined. The climate change is also impacting the agriculture and the forestry. So directly, the differences or changes to the water temperature of the waters, including lakes and others, that could also cause some diverse changes into the creatures that dwell in those areas. And human beings' health is also evaluated as part of the changes to the climate change. And then upon the assessment, what can we do? So regarding the responses, we too have been creating the response options. So let's say that all the starting points could be from water or health or climate change, or else food. So in each of the elements of the nexus, we start thinking about the response, especially from the top 15 response. We list the responses that we can take, and that counts 75. In the 75 nexus response, there could be some overlaps. However, Ultimately, in the global case, we have been identifying 71 responses, and we have been organizing these 71 into 10 categories. It could be about the conservation of the ecosystem, or else the recreation of the ecosystem, or else anything to manage these, or else how is it going to be the consumption. So there could be some responses focusing on the consumer side. And the more integrated way of plans and governance should also be made. So that's one of the responses. And then responses to manage the risks, as well as the equity and rights. We have to be responding to securing those rights as well. We also have some creation responses in order to align the financial area. So in that way, all the responses are categorized in 10, and we already have some responses that to make. And Nexus is complicated. However, the response is already there. However, just taking one of the options or one of the resolves, not just one response will be a silver bullet point in order to resolve all these solutions. Therefore, regarding nature-based solution, there is several that is listed for the Nexus response. So this Nexus response is said to be one of the very effective response for the nature-based response in solution. And so next, what is the Nexus elements and its impact? This is the assessment summarized within this chart. And when the black dot is larger and larger, it is a positive impact. And then when the dot is becoming smaller, it's rather to the negative side. This is based on the scientific papers that has been already edited and have been published. And there is the assessor who have made this summary for all these 71 responses having the evaluation. Within this, green infrastructure, that's positive to the health, and it could be having a positive impact to the higher transparency of the water, or else we can expect co-benefit. Therefore, green infrastructure that is to be counted as one of the nature-based solutions is also effective here. But other than that, I would like to highlight others like soil health. This is about how robust the soil is, and there's an intervention or response. And then when we compare to the 5 Nexus elements, there's many round big dots and circles. And I think afterwards, Dr. Nishihiro will be mentioning about the approach, a landscape approach. And this is also having a positive aspect from 5 areas, and nature-based solution too. Compared to the landscape approach on the higher line, the size of the circle is rather smaller. However, for all 5 aspects of Nexus, we can expect high, good, positive impact. However, constructing the dams and for the offshore wind power, there is negative impacts in multiple Nexus elements. Out of the 71 responses, the response options has been listed within the report, and towards SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. But what is going to be the impact to SDGs in a better way? Or else the Kunmin-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, there's 23 targets. And how is this Nexus response options are working on, or else what impact does it bring to the Paris Agreement? And by pursuing these effects, it's not just the nexus becoming improved, but then it will be contributing to the achievement of the SDGs target or the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework and the climate change. And next, this is about the middle of my presentation, and maybe I think you have already familiarized yourselves with this report. Within the nature-based solution, it's not the big column, but then within the nature-based solution, this is the so-called renewable energy, and to combine it with the nexus. And this report is a review in a multifaceted way how these combinations will be working well. And Dr. Alex Gasparak, who is my friend, an old friend too, and Dr. Gasparatos has been publicizing a report in 2021 and onwards too. I would like to introduce several elements of this report. So we have on the vertical line winds until the green thermal, these are all renewable energies. And then to the biodiversity loss. These are all the losses that could be related to the biodiversity loss. On the horizontal line, habitat loss, pollution, invasive alien species, and overexploitation and climate change. And the check mark indicates that there are impacts. And we have concrete evidence for the impact. And the X mark means that it lacks or it has minimal evidence for the existence of a causal link. So that was the X mark. And then when observing this chart, let's see the biomass energy and the habitat loss for all the renewables and the changes of the habitat. The renewable energies are commonly impacting those habitat loss and changes. And then for others, regarding, for instance, biomass energy and biofuel, it could be invasive species. So it could be expanding the invasive alien species. That is already understood. And to some cases, it could be having a negative impact of the climate change. So regarding, especially for the biofuel, that is also pointed out. And let's go to the more deeper discussions. These are more detailed discussions about wind energies and hydropower, what is going to be happening in which scale and which impact. That is summarized within this chart. So what you commonly see is for each of the renewables, there's habitat loss always seen, and it could be having a fragmentation of the habitat as well. So if it's wind power, it is often said that the bird will collide in the instruments, and many incidents are reported. And then bioenergy, in the case of bioenergy, there's fragmentation of the habitat. However, when there's the land conversion into an agricultural land, the single crop usually is going on, and then it is going to be a loss of the habitat. And then the usage of fertilizers and pesticides will also make toxicity and eutrophication of the land. And the greenhouse gas emission will be increasing through the life cycle, is pointed out. And then ocean energy, including the offshore wind power. The impact of the structure of the fish is going to be changing.
And then tropical fish species could have higher mortality rate. On the other hand, there are also some biodiversity benefits mentioned. So far, I've been talking about negative effects, but there have been some positive effects also reported for hydropower, where new habitats would be created. And also offshore wind, because the facilities are there, they can in fact create a conservation area where there's less fishing and maritime activities. But on the other hand, we still have bird strike problems, so we need to think of that problem as well. But it has been reported that the benefits are not, positive benefits are not zero. And so in the interest of time, I will not be going into detail here, but you can see on the right-hand side, there are some minus signs and plus signs which talk about the negative and positive effects that I have mentioned earlier. And that is summarized on the right-hand side table. So this is the last part of my presentation. And with significant support from ERICA's fund, especially for the strategy slot, we have been working on strategy S21. And this is a development of an integrated assessment model linking biodiversity and socioeconomic drivers and its social applications. Well, Japan, I'm trying to implement this to 3 regional sites. And I am the overall representative of the lead PI for the project. So the aim is, as mentioned earlier, to develop an integrated assessment model and to really roll that out at national and local scales in Japan. Themes 1 through 3 look at existing climate change integration models and trying to extend them so that where the models only focused on direct factors. We also look at people's values, actions, and behavior and culture, which are indirect factors. So we have been extending the integrated assessment models to include the value, behavior, culture, and biodiversity. And we have looked at future scenarios up to 2050 at a national level and the local level. And we've just completed the 2nd year and just did the intermediate report. And so we are looking to apply the model to the national level and local level. And so in the interest of time, I am not able to talk about the details here, but I would like to talk about one topic that's related to the topic of today. So when we look at expanding biodiversity conversion here, and internationally we talk about 30 by 30, meaning 30% conservation areas on land and in water by 2030. So initiatives are underway towards that goal. And so what are the appropriate sites for those conservation areas? Meanwhile, we also need to expand renewable energy sites. Where can we do that? Also, under climate change, there's a lot of increased natural disaster risk. So those disaster risks, what are the disaster-prone areas? To put it in easy to understand terms, when you want to set up a conservation area, which are the sites you should prioritize? And also, if you want to expand renewable energy, you want to avoid disasters occurring in the area. Also, by expanding renewable energy, you want to make sure you avoid habitat loss and loss to biodiversity. Where are the sites where you can enable that? That's one of the focus of our research. So from each of these perspectives, what site is appropriate for renewable energy? And also the OECM potential sites. where are those areas? We're trying to map that out. And also, where are the areas with high disaster risk? So we have yet to be publishing a paper on this research. So today, I am not able to give you the full details, but we already have 3 maps created, and we are overlaying them, looking at which areas we should avoid setting up renewable energy sites and which areas we should look at establishing conservation sites. And sometime in future, we would like to disclose the details. But because we have yet to publish a paper, I apologize, I'm not able to give you the details today. And here's a summary of my talk today. A best assessment has already identified 71 response options, including urban nature-based solutions. And renewable energy also has an important role to play. On the other hand, there are trade-offs, and we need to avoid those areas where trade-offs occur in going ahead with planning. And especially disasters, also conservation of nature and renewable energy solutions. Maintaining a balance is important, and that's been the focus of our research. So with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Dr. Saito, thank you very much. And our second lecture is titled Nature-Based Solution, NBS for Resilient Societies to Climate Change in Pacific Atoll Nations. And the presenter will be Dr. Kayane. Dr. Kayane, the floor is yours, please.
私どもの研究テーマである、太平洋干渉国に
Hello,
お
thank
け
you
る
very much. So I would like to present on our project,
と見えてますでしょうか
Nature Views. Can you see my shared materials?
スライドショーじゃない編集の画面になっております。
We're on the editing mode. Now you're all right. Thank you very much.
はい、私が研究代表者として、
As a representative of our project,
3年間の
starting FY 2024, we are now ongoing with the project called Nature-Based Solutions for Resilient Society to Climate Change in Pacific Atoll Nations. And we are supported by the research project from the Ministry of Environment, Japan of the MOE. And this project aims to implement sustainable coastal protection in atoll nations. And so it's not just only the coastal protection technology that we have been using. However, to maintain the coastal protections, we wanted to go to work on the nature-based solutions. And the model site is a very long coast in a low area, 200 meters long. And there are several 200,000 people living. And this is a model site called Majuro. So starting in this century, the sea level has increased 0.2 meter, and according to the scenario, CO2 emission scenario, there are expectations of additional 0.2 to 1.0 meter rise. And sea level rise will continue for millennia after the global warming would hit a plateau in the next century. Therefore, it is going to be additional 1.1 to 3 meters, and at the worst case scenario, the sea rise will be rising such as 10 meters. So within that backdrop, the most vulnerable is there's the coral reef and foraminiferous sand created by atoll nations. So on the left-hand side, you see that the distribution of the coral reef on the map, and the blue dot are indicating the atoll distributions. Maldives in Indian Ocean, and Marshall Islands, the Kiribati and Tuvalu, all in the Pacific, are created by atoll. So they are atoll nations.
海面上昇による国土の
And
水没
with the
録
raise of
すで
the
に水没している
sea,
というメディア
uh,
の報道
the
もあります
area
し、
of the land
今世
is
紀中には
inundated
かなり
by the
状
sea
況になる
waters.
可能性が
And
高い
now, within this
そういう
century, there will be a critical point
で、マ
for
ジロ
these
は
nations.
これ幅
And
100メーター
Majuro
ほどの、
is
道の両側
this
が
one
すぐ
is about 100
左
meters
側が
broad,
太平洋
and
側
then on the
右側
left-hand
が
side is
リングの近く
outer
のラグ
sea,
ーンです
and
が、
then in the
標
right
高が
hand it is
このよう
the
に2メーター
lagoon,
程度の
the
ところに
inner
大勢
ring.
の
And then,
都
as
市
you can
都市
see,
が築かれています。
on
政
the
府庁舎
higher
のホテル
area,
も
there's
スー
many
パーマーケットも
hotels,
すべて
residencies,
この狭い
supermarkets, and the
標高の低い
administrational
島
governmental
の上に
buildings.
連なってい
So
ます。
within the low
で、今世紀中に
height of
今
the
世紀、こ
island,
れ
there
は
are
非常に
many
古い、かな
buildings
り
and
古い
residences.
IPCC の
And
予測で
within
すけれ
this
ども、
century,
65センチ
according
海
to
面
a
上昇
very
するとすると、気
old
候潮位の時、気候潮位の
IPCC
時には、
records, when the
熊が
65
海に現れてしまう
centimeters
ような、そうい
high,
う危機にあります。
if there's a rise of 65 centimeters, then the
で、
island
多くの
itself
島
will be in a
では、
critical state.
これはキリ
In
バティ、
many of the
左側はキ
islands,
リバスの写
this
真で
is
すが、
on the left-hand top,
自
this is a
分の所有
Kiribati
している土地の
photograph.
先にこう
And
した
so
簡
just
易的な護岸を作っている例
around
が
their
多く見られるん
gardens,
ですけれど
around
も、
their
これ
houses,
は後
they
で紹
make a
介しま
very
すように、
simple
不適
sea
切な
break,
適応
water
策、
break.
マルア
However,
ダプテーシ
this
ョンと
is
いうふ
a
うに、され
maladaptation
てい
is
ます。
what we understand
さらに、
as.
右上
And
はツバ
further,
ル
on the
の
right-hand side, this is a
埋め立て地、
photograph
それ
of
から左
Tuvalu,
下、
reclaimed
右
land,
右
and
上
left-hand
と
side
右の下
bottom
は、ツバルの
and the right-hand
埋め
side
立
top.
ての様子、
This is a
それから、
reclaimed island, a
左下は
reclaimed area
モルジ
of
ブの
Tuvalu,
埋
and
め立ての
right-hand
様子
side
をネイチャーが記録されたの
bottom
ですが、
is
こうした
the
もの、
reclamation
も
of
ちろん
Maldives,
幅が200メーター程度の
and
島で、
it is
200メー
about
ター
200
埋め
meters
立て
wide
地、
island
土地が
and
広がるわ
200
けです
meter
から、島の
reclamation.
人たちにとっては非常に
Therefore, for
素
the
晴らしいことだ
islanders,
と思うんです。こう
they
いった
think that they
政策
benefit
が
from the
海面上昇
extension of
適
the
応策
land.
として取られているんで
However,
すが、問
these
題は
are
この砂
taken
をどこ
as
から取って
an
くるかということ
effort
で、
in order
ツバルの場合には
to
この
curtail
先の
waters.
ラグーンの
And
水
the
深が浅い
sand
と
that
ころから
comes from
砂を取っ
where
て
the
いますの
lagoon
で、
are in a
そこに
shallow
大きな
state,
浚渫湖
and
が
that
Google
shallow
Earth でも
is
見られるよう
created.
な浚渫湖ができてい
But
て、そ
because
こが
they
青潮の原因になっ
harvest
てしまった
sand,
り、少なくと
they
も
can
埋め
be
立てし
some
たところ
pits
は、
that you can
そ
already
の
see
先
by the
は
Google Maps.
サンゴが育たないということ
And
で、
then because of that,
こちらも
it is not going to be
生態系
cultivating the
に
coral reefs.
と
Therefore,
生態
to
系のプ
the
ロセスに
ecosystem and the
馴染んだ
process of the
対策と
ecosystem,
は言い難いという
this
ふうに私ども
countermeasure
は捉え
is
ていま
not
す。
very well. That is how
まあ、そも
we
そも、
take.
そういった適用策を
To
取
start
る前
with,
に、そ
before
もそも
starting
こういった
such
環
an
礁の
great
島が
technology,
どのようにできているのかということ
how
を
is
きちんと理
how
解
are
する
these
必要があります。
atoll
最初
islands
に、
created?
サンゴが
Well,
積み重な
first,
って、
there's going to
サン
be
ゴ礁の土台を
accumulation
作りま
of
す。
the coral reefs
た
to
だ、
make a
サンゴは海面よ
foundation.
りも上には
However,
成長することがで
coral
きません
reefs
から、
will not
低潮
grow
今
above the
高い山
water
土台
level.
をすると、その
Therefore,
上に
after
最
the
初は暴
foundation
風
on
など
top,
の時
there's
に
going to
サン
be
ゴの壊れた
some
礫
coral
が打ち上がってき
broken
て、小さな山を作る。で
branches,
そうすると、そ
creating
の山の
some
背後に
mountainous
我々の調査で
area.
明らかになった
And
のは、
then
有
on
効
top of
虫、
that, according
沖
to
縄
our
などで
investigation, we
林に
found
入って
out
星
that
砂とし
there's
て売られている。
foraminifera.
それの砂
Foraminifera
が
is well known
堆
in
積し
Okinawa
て、
beaches,
島
and they
が
are
サンゴ
collected
のか
and
けらと有効虫の
put
砂によ
into
って、
some small
島が
bottles
拡
for
大してい
some
ると
souvenirs.
いうの
But
が、
those foraminifera
感
sand
触
will
島
be
の生成
creating
形
on
成過
top
程です。
of the
です
coral
から、
gravels.
サンゴにしても有効虫にしても、
So
干渉
whether
の
it be
島というのは
corals
100%
and the
生物の
foraminifera,
意外
the
によって
atoll nations are
エコ
100%
ロジカル
made
なプロ
by
セスで形
biological
成されているということが
materials.
言えるわけで、その形成プロセスを理解し
And
ないで、
through that creation process, we have to
湾
understand
と
that
グレ
process.
海岸工学だけによる防
And
護をす
without
ると、
understanding, we are not
持
able
続可
to
能でな
create
い
an
し、
engineering
逆に
seawater or
それにコンフリク
breakwater,
トする
which
可
will
能性
not
もある
be
ということになりま
sustainable,
す。
and it could be
もう少し
making
丁寧に
conflict to the
説明を紹介
natural
しますと、
process.
会
And
社設置
another
時、
thing to
我々
introduce
実
is
は2002年から2007
after
年にも環境
2002
推
to
進で環
2007,
礁
we
の
have
島々
been investigating and making a survey for these atoll nations with the support of the Global Environment Research Fund. And this is Laura Island, a cross-section of this island. Left-hand side is outer ocean, inner side is on the right side, and more than half, or around a third, fourth quarter, this is quarter. The quarter part indicates that this is all created by coral reefs and foramidifera.
サンゴの歴が
オレオズ
それから一抱えもあるような歴が打ち上げられてできたストームリッジです。
a storm ridge that is created by some broken branches of the corals, and meaning that the coral reef is the natural sea break or seawater. Therefore, the ecosystem is very crucial for the creation and the maintenance of the island itself. And regarding Foraminifera, we were not so focused on, previously Foraminifera was not so focused. However, on our investigation, we come to understand that Foraminifera was crucial, and there were many of these Foraminifera living around that area. And then the parent Foraminifera will be died out to become the sand, the star-shaped like sand. And after you see this photograph on the eastern side, as you can see, there are many cities located, but other areas on the top side, these are the pristine area, natural state of the island can be seen. So natural area, you can see many Foraminifera living. However, on the urban side of the coast, the living numbers of the Foraminifera become scarce, and in the urban area, the coral reefs are also becoming dead. That was observed. So currently, the problem is the more than ever regarding the island becoming underwater in the seawater because of sea level rise. But there could be some pollutions too. And this is Konbakare of Tuvalu, and this is Majuro, the capital of the country. And you can see that there's many ways that cannot be processed, and it is packed over and having a lot of problems making destructions to the islands.
So as I mentioned in the beginning, these kinds of vertical seawalls, the waves that come from the ocean will be, the waves will be breaking at the foot of a vertical seawall. And so the sand beneath will be eroded. And so even during regular times, you can see the waves going up this high. And you can see that there's going to be more of these erosions happening in future. So these are some of the miniature versions of the mistakes that Japan made during the high economic growth era. So we want to learn lessons from the mistakes made in the Japanese high economic growth era and come up with proposals for better solutions. And so because the Atoll Island is created by coral, gravel, and also foraminifera, we need to think of these solutions. And so the threats to Atoll Islands, if we have a 1 meter or 2 meter sea level rise this century, that's a real crisis. However, the biodiversity loss and also the vertical seawall and also creating piers directly in areas where there could be impact. These are local problems that are cropping up, and that's because there's a concentration of population in capital areas. So socioeconomic problems, globalization. The Atoll Islands are being threatened by global environmental change and globalization of socioeconomics. And so we need to look at really restoring the coral reefs with a combination of nature-based solutions, making sure that the measures taken do not conflict with nature, making sure that there's engineering, nature-based solution engineering, ecosystem restoration, and also adding some social measures as well, possibly adding some coral breeding and nursery, and also working on these measures to create a resilient society. That is what we are proposing. For example,
我々日本で作った様々な
We have in
これ
Japan
は産
various
業
technologies
産卵を
developed,
ネ
and
ッ
this
トで集めてそのネットの
is
中で
showing how
幼
we
生
collect
受精
eggs and
させて幼
sperms
生
and
にして
corals,
でそれを自然
and
に
the
発酵
fertilization
する
happens
そうい
inside of the
う
net,
技術ですが日本が持ってい
and
る
the
様々な技
fertilized
術を提
eggs
案し
become
て
larva inside the net.
これは沖縄の那
So
覇の沖合
this is
防波堤にたくさん
from
サンゴが寄せ
off
て
the
おります
coast of
こういった技
Okinawa
術
and
を
Naha
活用
City,
して
where we created a block to enhance coral
で
recruitment and
3年のプ
succeeded
ロジェ
in
クト研究で
flourishing
約半
corals.
分レポートに終わ
So
らせ
this
る
is
ん
a
じゃなくて
3-year
なんとか
project. Instead of
そ
ending
の
with just a
終
paper
了後には実
or a
際の社会
report,
実装につな
we
げたい
really
と
want
いうの
to
が
make the
こちら
project
の
lead to
目
social
標で
implementation.
その
That
た
is
め
the
には現
goal of
在ちょ
our
うど
project.
3年のプロジェクトの真ん中ですけれども
And we are
こ
just
の
in the middle of the
次の
3-year project,
実装に向けて
and we want to
次
work
々に
towards the
やらなければいけ
next
ないという
phase,
状
which
況
is
で
social
ぜひ皆さ
implementation.
ん
We
の
need to start
助け
preparations now,
ご
and we
協力を
look
得られればというふうに
to
思います
your
ありがとうございま
advice
し
and
た
also your support. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
旦那様、ありがとうございました。続き
Thank
ま
you
して、
very much,
3
Doctor.
講演目、自然を起点とした
So
課題
now
解決、
for the third
NBS に向け
lecture.
た多様な主
The
体の
third
共
lecture
同、
will be
イ
delivered
ンバル
by
マ流
Dr.
域での
Jun
研究と
Nishio,
実践と
Deputy
題しまして、
Director, National
国立環
Institute
境
for
研究所の
Environmental
西弘淳
Studies.
様よりご講演をいただきます。西弘様、よろし
And
くお願いいた
his
します。
topic will be Nature-Based Solutions, NBS, through multi-stakeholder collaboration, case studies from the Impanuma watershed.
はい、国立環境研究所の西
Thank
弘
you
で
very
す。
much for having
画面
me.
共有
This
これ
is
で問題ないでし
Nishihiro
ょう
from
か。
the
はい、ご
Environmental
ざいます。
National
よろしくお願いいたします
Institution for
はい、
Environmental Studies
私
Japan.
からは、
Can you see? Yes.
さまざまな主体が連
So
携
for
して進
myself,
める NBS と
I
い
would
うこ
like
とで、
to introduce about the NPS
日
with
本の国内での
multi-stakes or
一つの事例を
multi-stakeholders
ご紹介し
collaboration.
たいと思
And
い
with
ま
that,
す。
I would like to
千
introduce
葉
a
県の
case
印
in
旛沼
Japan,
というと
which
ころの
is a project
流
at
域での取
the
り組みのご紹
Chiba
介を
Prefecture
主
in
に
Panama
行います。
watershed.
まずちょっとイントロとして
So first of
NBS
all,
で
to
すが、
start with,
これ自
regarding
体が今日の
NPS,
主要なテーマですので、
this is
改
a
めて
major
説明する
topic
必
of
要は
today,
ないかと
and
思います
I
が、
suppose I do not have
自
to
然の機
explain
能
this
を
thoroughly,
効果的に
but
活
it
用
is
して、
about
さまざま
using
な
the
社
strength
会
of the
課題の
nature
解決
in
に
order to solve
自
various
然を役立ててい
uh,
くという発想
problems
なわけですが、よく
and
似
to
た概
restore
念、
and
エ
manage
コ
modified
DRR という言い
ecosystems
方も
and
ありま
address
す。
societal
生態系に根
changes.
ざ
And
し
then
た
a
防災技
similar
術
concept
と
is
いうことに言い換えます。
eco-DRR.
生
So
態系の
using
機能を
the
活用して、災害そのものを止めることは
ecological
できなくても、そ
area
の時の
in
被害の
order
程
to
度を
mitigate
軽
disaster
減した
risks.
り、あるい
So
は災害からの回復能力を
or
高めた
else
り
in
とい
order
うこと
to
が
heighten
該当します
the
ま
recovery
た、
from the
関
disaster
連
by
の
using the
概念で
ecosystem
ですね、
based
EBA とエ
idea.
コシステムベースアダプテ
And
ーションという言
there's
葉も
also
使わ
a
れるもの
word
があります。
such as
ここでいうアダ
EBA,
プテーションというのは、
ecosystem-based
クライメートチ
adaptation.
ェン
So
ジに
what we
対す
mean
る
about
適
this
応、
is
気候変動
about
適応という
the
ことになりま
applying
す。
to the climate
気候
change
変動を止め
ecosystem-based
ることそのも
adaptation.
の
So we
にも
cannot
生態
curtail
系は関係しますが、
totally,
そ
but
れだけでは
the
なく、
natural
生態系の機
ecosystems
能
can
や
work
生物多
to
様性を
reduce the
活用することによって、気候変動が進
risks.
行して
And then
も、さほど被害
when
が大きくなら
utilizing
ないよ
these
うな社会を
ecosystems,
作っていく
we
とい
can
うとこ
create
ろ
a
がエコシス
society
テムベース
where
ア
the
ダプテー
risks
ション
can
になり
be
ます。
mitigated. That is the
エコ
ecosystem-based
DRR とか
adaptation.
EBA と似たような
Eco-DRR
ですね、
and
単語がいくつもあ
Eco-EBA,
りますが、
there are many
お
likewise
気づきのようにこれらは非常
words
に
that
関
are
連が深
similar.
く重複のあ
But
る
as
概
you
念です。
notice already, those are very
気
similar
候変動に
concept
伴っ
and
て
have
災害
many
が激甚
overlapping
化してい
area.
るということを考
And
えると、
so thinking
エコ
that
DRR で
this
もあり、
disaster
EBA
is
にもなると
becoming
いうよ
so
うな
severe these
選択肢
days,
もたくさんあ
the
るわけです。
EBA and
NBS という
eco-DRR,
のはこれ
there
らを
should
包
be
含する
various
広い概
options
念
that
と
we
い
should
う
be
言い
able
方が
to
できるか
select
と
from.
思います。
And overarching the
さて、
EBA and
この NBS で
eco-DRR,
すが、
NBS
NBS を
is
進
the
める上
overarching
で、
concept. And moving forward, working on
重要になる
this,
取
what
り
is
組み
going to
方、
be
アプロー
very
チということ
important
の中で、
approach is
ランドスケープアプローチの重
the
要性という
so-called
ことが
landscape
指摘されてい
approach.
ます。ランドスケープアプローチと
It
い
is
う
pointed
の
out
は、
that
まあ、
landscape
い
approach
く
is
つかの特徴があるん
important
ですが、
and it has
一つは
several
適切な強
features.
断ス
One is having an appropriate spatial scale. For instance, like within not, so there could be EPS within introduced within the company's garden, or else, but it should be understanding the feature of a more larger wide area. So that is the understanding of the concept, and it's not only that, it should be considering the feature geologically, ecologically, and society-wise, and also think about the response to the local characteristics as well. That's also about the important factors of landscape approach. And the landscape approach's important point is pointed out in various international initiatives. Then, how can we go on and introduce the landscape approach? There are not many cases, and with the support of ERCA, we have been utilizing the support from the authority. We are now working in a project to work for the landscape approach and to research NBS in the Lake Imba watershed. So Japan is a mountainous area. About where we are projecting, this is unexpectedly a flat area. So it is flat and it is around 50 meters high, and then it has a lower area as well. That is less than 10 meters, and then water that falls on the upland forms groundwater, which emerges from the ground in valley, then creates wetlands. The water flows into rivers and lakes, and these are the spatial area. There's already problems, and with the human population increasing within the uplands, there's the increasing nutrient loads coming down into the water, and then it could be that there's agricultural land used to be having the water low by the natural channel. However, nowadays we have the drainage channel that's making the agricultural production increased. However, the lowland has a fear and risk of higher flooding. So these problems, when the climate change is becoming much more severe, then we expect that this is going to be happening in greater severity. The precipitation quantity will be much more severe as well and concentrated to become a very severe rain. And then the nitrogen and such, the nutrients will be flowing down into the river or the lakes, making various problems. And the rising temperature or else rising temperature within the waters are also going to be a problem too. The various problems will be happening, and within that backdrop, we're working on NBS. And the landscape scale, there are several challenges. One is about we must be working on the watershed area. However, the challenge is that the watershed is not equal to the municipality area, the zoning of the municipality. So actually, this area where we work is divided into 13 municipalities. Therefore, we started with working with the watershed scale and also divided that from the tiered way of handling the municipal areas. So what is going to be most effective, or else which option will be effective? We mapped out and try to organize the information that we had. And according to the information, we have been creating a platform to utilize, which is applicable to the region, and then to set a target in order to have our roles clear. So within that area, we are now working with the researching, with the resourcing funding, and this is about multi-function of the ecosystem. For instance, the flood control functions. So these are to avoid the floods, and whenever there are natural valleys or else of the human-made drainage, what is the difference? And when there's a natural valley, the runoff of the rain precipitation will be decreased naturally, or else it will be flowing slowly in order so that the water damage will not happen. And by using the wetlands, then we can lower the risks of the lower river side. So we have been also developing a map tool regarding what will happen.
印旛沼では不栄養化の問題があるということを申し上げたんですけれども、農地由来の栄養に対する対策というときに自
We
然の
also
活
have
用
eutrophication problems, and nature-based solutions are very effective in tackling that because there are some spring water that have high contents of nutrients when they are at the downstream of the farmlands and going through these wetlands. Because of the nutrient removal functions, we can see the nitrogen content going down. We have created maps of where that effective function is working. And this will also contribute to biodiversity conservation. So this is originally land that was used as a rice paddy, and that has been restored back to a wetland. And a lot of biodiversity has been restored, including the red list species. And so places that are affected for biodiversity conservation, there is a habitat model calculation that is done that enables us to create a map of where would be an effective site for the site. And also for the spring water, we need rainwater to really infiltrate into the land. And so companies and construction company, Takenaka, has a site where the rainwater can seep in and also contribute to biodiversity conservation. So these initiatives are underway. So by leveraging this information, there are a lot of local scale initiatives underway. For example, you will notice that I'm actually outdoors right now. And today I've been working with stakeholders from various companies and NGOs. Today, they're working together on a voluntary activity to really recover the natural functions. And these initiatives are starting in the watershed areas and also contributing to education of children on the wetlands, and also we are validating research suggesting that the wetlands restoration would contribute to biodiversity. And we're also working on creating an information sharing platform using WebGIS and looking at various information in the watershed, for example, the topographical information, and how the ground and the valleys are connected through underground water. And so this would be helpful in thinking which uplands area you should be taking care of when doing some development work, etc. And sharing that information and working on study sessions with citizens, we're trying to disseminate the information. So these initiatives, it's really important to really think of incentives for long-term implementation. In Japan, the public institutional framework has yet to reach the level it needs to reach. But in recent years, Japan began designating certified sustainability managed natural sites based on a new law. So it's based on the coming Montreal GBF, and in order to cater to those targets, we're also working in these watershed areas to restore areas, and by using this certified sustainability managed natural sites, we're working to promote cooperation with private sector companies as well. And there's also a system using the forestry taxation systems. So, as I have been talking in the watershed area of Lake Imbanuma, the implementation of NBS through a landscape approach is progressing. Researchers have been working on this theme, and through interactions, we're working on these initiatives. And through these activities, we're trying to bring the diverse functions of the ecosystem, such as disaster reduction and biodiversity, etc. We are now able to quantify some of that function. And so even after the research period is over, we need to create a mechanism that enables the local community to continue with the work. For example, maintaining the database, maintaining the network. And so really identifying clear roles and positioning inside of the administrative actions, that's also another thing that needs to be worked on. So basically, I've been talking about the research that we have been doing with Erica's fund. And also, part of the research has also got funding from CSTI as well. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nishihiro. From here on, we would like to start and move to a panel discussion, including QA. The moderator will be performed by Dr. Makino Yamanoshita. The panelists are Dr. Saito, Dr. Kayane, and Dr. Nishihiro. So, Dr. Yamanoshita, the floor is yours. So this is Yamanoshita that had just been introduced, and thank you very much for having me. So thank you very much for your interesting presentation, doctors. The scale and approach are all different. However, having said that, you are all based on the natural base to work on societal issues and to make resolutions. So the nature-based solution was a common topic of your lectures. So from Dr. Saito mentioned about Nexus and the climate change response, the renewable energy, which is the important card in order to respond to climate change, has also been mentioned. But then you mentioned that it could be a trade-off with the biodiversity. And from Dr. Kayane, you mentioned about the atoll nations and using the strength of the coral reefs and the bioecology. It was very interesting. And then what was most interesting to me was that using and leveraging Japanese experiences could be done. And from Dr. Nishihiro, I think you might be at the site of the Imbanuma. This is a field in Japan. And with that Imbanuma stage, we are working on various wide-scale, including various stakeholders. Those people are the players such as the NPOs and companies and citizens. So it is a practical story, which was very interesting. And now we would like to entertain questions from the floor. So first of all, about the coral reef, I think this will be headed for Dr. Kayane. So about the transfer of the coral reefs, are you bringing Okinawa corals for transplanting them into the Pacific Islands, and not only technical issues? This is also related to the foreign alien species that are coming in. So do you need to be working with the local people? What's the question, please? Thank you very much for the question. As you have been mentioning, we cannot bring in alien species, therefore, whether it could be Majuro, whether it could be Maldives and Okinawa, we use coral reefs at the local site, but we will be cultivating the varieties of corals there. So Okinawa does cultivate the coral reefs. However, basically, yes, we are working basically on Okinawa coral reefs as well. Thank you very much. The next question is in English. However, I will summarize and translate into Japanese. So I think this hits to Dr. Nishihiro. When the local community is working on NBS, we need funding. So what kind of a funding scheme are there? So you have already mentioned within your presentation lecture, but if you can share, please do. Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. So there's many. So we are now, in reality, what we are doing is to combine various sources of funding. So there could be private and public fund source. So let's say if it is a public foundation, and then if it is going to be forestry budget could be secured to some extent. And for agricultural area was usually focusing just for producing food. However, these days the authorities are open for multifaceted functions and support. Therefore, for agricultural land too, we have some public funding, but in order to secure that, various players must combine together and work together in order to secure the funding. That is about the usage of the public funds. And the other one is the private fund. Currently, along with the corporation, is crucial. So it is a major part of our funding. Right now, I am here at Shimizu Constructions to work at Imbanuma. And they working within such an project is related to the technical development of companies. And for other companies, it could be that the insurance companies are funding that is related to the DRR. So according to the type of the private companies, they are trying to find a various touching point or the point that we can coordinate together. So that is the way we secure fund, and I hope I have answered your question. Thank you very much. So we have another question to Dr. Saito, please. When you have mentioned so I would like to introduce more about the detail of the NBS, and I think you have mentioned about high effectiveness for the NBS within the urban city. So what does it mean? Because you talk about NBS, and NBS is a similar notion to nature, but then you mentioned urban. So what are the relationships, please? Thank you very much. So what I mean is about having some organizations at the Greenlands, the carbon sink capability will be heightened, and then mitigation of climate change impact will happen, and then that's going to be related to the health of the region, and then the touch point with the natures will be increased. So there's a positive impact, and the quality of the work will be different. It will be improved too. And then basically we will have a various comprehensive way of co-benefit within the urban cities. So urban cities may have greenlands, but then working on that greenlands, for instance, the urban agricultural land could also be a co-benefit. And one of the cases as NBS is a natural way of remedy or therapy. So this might not be an NBS, however, within the health area for human beings, this is now listed as a natural therapy too. So this is one of the effective response that is mentioned, and it is counted as a plus and positive impact. So thank you very much. And because of the restriction of time, we would like to close the Q&A, and from here on, we would like to go on with the discussion. So first of all, I would like to ask you, doctors, at your sites and within your researches,
を社会に実際に実施していくことに
When we are implementing the NBS actually into the society, this is going to be the meaningful place. However, what is going to be the biggest difficulties that is going to make NBS difficult to be permeated within the society? So first of all, can we start with Dr. Saito?
ネクサスって学問的に言うの
So,
いいんですけども、結局それを
disciplinary wise, nexus is very easy to say. However, when we would like to bring it down into the reality, there's a very difficult aspect because if it is about the topic of water, then maybe we might bring the topic to the Minister of Land and Infrastructure. And if it could be food, it could be brought to the Ministry of Agriculture. Therefore, there's zoning in a different way. That happens with DRR as well, disaster mitigation as well. So we have to be juxtapositioning the plan and the way to work in reality. And after indication, that has to be brought down into the actual plan. And there's each tier and and that relates to the regional municipality, and we need to coordinate with the authorities there too. Therefore, according to the person in charge, maybe the plan could be different, or else maybe if there could be a transfer of the people who we have been working with, totally changes our way of work. So that is a big wall in difficulty. Thank you.
話にも関連すると思うんですけれども、一点はやっぱり役所レベルのコーディネーションだけではな
Dr.
く、
Nishihiro, various coordination work needs to take place. We have stakeholders such as companies and also citizens, and the aims are all different as well. Everyone has different priorities that they think is important. So what kind of challenges do you see in coordination? And in addition to that, Doctor, what are some of the barriers that you see? Yes, so current barriers and current solutions that we are working on, I'd like to blend that in my answer. So NBS, an administrative office that handles that as their full responsibility, or an organization that puts NBS as their #1 priority, that's very rare. But a lot of activities really do have some kind of relationship with nature-based solutions. So how can people from different sectors come together in the same place, talk about the goals and effective measures? I think it's very simple, but it all comes to having that communication. And in order to resolve that challenge, what we're doing for the Imbanuma project is that for the administrators, we have an in-city study session inviting not only environmental office, we invite an agricultural policy-making divisions and also commercial divisions as well, and invite those officials over to join the city session. We also call this the outdoors workshop, but we also invite people from companies as well, in addition to administrative officers, have them really look at the outdoor situation and then go into discussion. So then you can share how the thing that we are tackling is all comprehensive. And so we can work on that nature-based solution. And I think that's kind of the trick to trying to make this work. Thank you. Really getting to know the actual situation in the front lines is going to be important. And looking at the actual situation could change people's mindset. And that's where we come to Dr. Kayane's presentations about the atoll islands. We were surprised to know the situation there. And Dr. Kayane, in order to form consensus, in the atoll islands, this is a serious problem. And so I would assume that maybe because it's such a serious problem, people will agree on that is important. But is there a problem with the consensus forming? Could you talk about what barriers there are from an engineering or technology standpoint? Yes, in one word, there's a time gap problem. the engineering methods for landfill and also embankments, you can visibly see the effects. But restoring coral reefs take time. You need to have the corals eggs-fertilized and then become larvae. That's going to take years. It's going to take 5 years and 10 years on the restoration work. And getting the local community people to agree and understand how long it takes really creates a time gap. Because we say that foraminifera are making up your ground, and that's what your island is made up of. The local people agree and that it makes sense. But then when it comes to various measures, then we run into problems with the time gap. Now, the NBS mitigation adaptation measures are a problem 100 years in future because it's adaptation. So even if you adapt, you will need to continuously adapt towards that sea level rise that's coming 100 years in future. So you need to fill the time gap and basing the core on short-term initiatives, but also looking at sustainable adaptation measures for the long term and doing it in a way that makes sense to the local community. And assessing the effectiveness, if it's embankments and also landfill, negative or positive effects can immediately be assessed. We already have methodologies in place for them. But for coral reef restoration, there's no methodology or assessment criteria established. So we need to work on that as well. It's going to take 5 or 10 years in the future to be restoring them. But we need to be having these evaluation methodologies in place so that we can evaluate them at the right time. Thank you. So in that sense, what will improve and what is deteriorating, I think it's quite important to come up with measures and metrics that everyone can agree on to measure those impacts. So that's where I come back to Dr. Saito's presentation. You talked about Nexus. Nexus is about synergy and trade-off, I believe. So when you do one thing right, then it has a trade-off with some other measures. So I wanted to ask you about your experience, Dr. Nishihiro, in working on Imbanuma Lake. Have you seen any challenges with trade-off? Yes, of course, we have. But nature-based solutions, we should not think of these measures confrontational. There are measures that rely on artificial artifacts versus nature-based solutions. And when you're relying on artificial man-made measures, infrastructure, that tends to have more trade-offs. So these artifacts and nature need to be blended. That's important. But talking about the technology, if you're working on disaster reduction measures, having dams and also having embankments is very effective. It's easy to assess the project impact, but they are prone to trade-offs with nature. On the other hand, nature-based solutions, for example, making the water circulation slower, for example, have smaller trade-offs. And so on a macro level, nature-based solutions provide options that would have a weaker trade-off. And so combining them effectively is important. But of course, even among NBS measures, there are trade-offs. If you try to conserve the wetlands, you could have methane gas forming, which would contribute to climate change. But by managing the water quality, you can actually reduce the methane levels. So you can have some creative technology developed to do that. And so research in those kind of creative technology is going to be quite important. Thank you. So you need to look at this in a longer time frame, and slowing things down may become a key word.
早根先生と共通する部分
So
があ
I
るかなと
believe what you
思い
said,
ました。 ありがとうございます。
has some commonality
早根
with what
先
Dr.
生の
Kayane
言
said.
うそ
So
の
Dr.
参照国
Kayane,
も日本のなんかこう
so
常識
Atoll
的な
Islands,
状況となんか全然異
when
な
you
る中で、そ
compare
の
that
トレード
to
オフ、
what's
まあ、そ
commonly
の
seen
前
in
にお話しい
Japan,
ただいたグ
it's
レーイ
totally
ンフラグ
different.
的なものとのトレード
And
オフ
you
っていうところが
mentioned
あると思うんで
trade-offs
す
with
が、
great infrastructure.
こう干渉国のような状況であって
So
も、そ
in
こを気に
Atoll
してい
Island
かなければい
conditions,
けない状況にあると、トレードオフの検討が必要だというところをもう少し伺え
could you
ると
discuss
ありがたい
or
です。
tell us a bit more about the trade-offs that we need to consider? I'm not sure if you could call this a trade-off, but do you want to go for an all-gray infrastructure, or do you want to go for 100% nature-based solution? It's going to be hard to convince the local community. Are you going to go 100% gray? And or what measures are you going to put in place to conserve the ecosystem? So when you think of restoring the coral reefs, that does not have any negative impact. So it's an area for tourism and also biodiversity and also water resources. There's no bad impact that could come from having more coral reefs. And of course, in order to restore the coral reefs, you need to work on environmental measures such as waste management. So for coral reefs, I believe there's no trade-off. Do you have anything to lose by conserving them? No, but it's a matter of time. Taking short-term measures that may potentially degrade the coral
あり
reefs.
がとうございます。
How do you
そういう意味でも先生
work
の
on that trade-off
ご紹
is
介いただい
what we need to
た
think of.
2つ、
So
グレ
in
ーと
that sense,
グリ
you
ーンを合
mentioned
わせ、ブルーです
two
かね、を合
no
わせる
gray
っ
and
ていう
green
とこ
or
ろは
blue
大変興味
technology
深かったのと、あと今
was
私
quite
大変気づかれた
interesting.
のが、私
And I
も
was
まあ
very
森林と
encouraged
か
to,
をやっているん
yeah,
ですが、
I
保
work on
全、
forestry,
自
etc.
然を保全してどれ
And
だけ良くなったの
by
か見せてほし
conserving
いみたいな
nature,
こと言われるんですけど、
sometimes
全
people
部いいん
ask
ですけ
me,
どって今
can
先生がおっしゃったの
they
が、なんか
see
ちょっと
how much
心強く
improvement
て、
there has
そ
been?
う
And
で
you
すよ
said
ね
it's
って
all
思
good.
って
There's no
伺い
negative
ました。本当
consequence.
に
And
そう
so
なん
I
ですよ。
totally
皆さん
agree.
も大きな声で言い
So
たいで
everyone,
す。
and I want to
は
say
い。
this in
で
a
は
loud
斉藤
voice,
先
these
生
nature
に最
solutions
後、
are all
このトレー
beneficial.
ドオフの関
And
係を
Dr.
研究の
Saito,
中で可視化しようというとこ
when
ろ
you
に
try
取り
to
組まれていると思うんですけれども、
visualize
先
the
生の
trade-off
なんか研
relationship,
究の
I
中
know
で
you're working
そ
on
の
that in your
難しさ
research
と
as
かってい
well.
うところを伺えた
So
ら
what are some
と
of the
思うんですけ
difficulties
ど
you
ど
have
うで
been
しょうか。
facing with your research in visualizing
はい、ありがとうございま
the
す。
trade-off of this item?
いろんなパターンのトレードオフがあっ
Thank you. There are
て、しか
different
もそれ
patterns of
が
trade-offs,
起きたときに
and when they happen,
ネガティブな影響が誰に帰属する形で発生
no,
するの
who
か。
is the negative
影
consequence
響を受ける
attributed
方
to?
々のとこ
And
ろまで紐付けた形で、
you
今
need to link this
適量
to
レベ
the
ル
people
で
who are impacted as well.
あ
At
る
the
程度
land
空
use
間的
level,
に落とすことができる
to a certain
ところ
extent,
まで
we
は
can
やっているんで
spatially
すね。
map
保
out
護区にした
the
方がいいとこ
relationship.
ろと、それ
There
と
are
最低限
some
の
places
メ
that
テ
you
リところと自然
should
災
think
害
of
のリ
designating
スク
as a
が上がり
conservation
にくい
site
ところ
or
ということの
places
マップ化をし
with
て、
higher risk
空
and
間的
lower
にそれを
risk. You can map that
そ
out
こ
and
で
spatially
トレードオフが起きそうな場所
look at
と
potential
支
trade-off
配者が
areas
期待できるところという
and
のは
also
時
areas
間
where you
的
can
に
expect
設置
synergy.
できる状
So
況
you
にな
can
って
spatially
いる。まあ、それが実
identify
際
those sites.
どういった形で誰に帰属する形
But
で
actually,
そのネガティブな影響が起きて、でそれが長期的に
what
どうい
negative
う意
impacts
味を
would
持つのか
occur
影響を
affecting
持つ
whom
のか
and
と
what
いう
is
そのあ
long-term
たりが、
effect?
災害にしても
So
自
be
然
it
保護
natural
にしても再
disasters
生可能
or
エネルギーに
conservation
しても
of
またそこ
nature
での
or
何しろ
renewable
コストと
energy.
リスクとか便益
You
のリ
need to
ター
look
ン
at
の
the
時間スケー
cost,
ルがそれぞれまた
risk,
違う
and
ので、
benefits. The
そ
return
の
is
中
different for
で
each
そこ
one.
に関係する主体が納得いくような形
And so
で
you need
そ
to
の負担と便益の
have
と
the
ころのコスト
burden
分担
and
と
the
いうのをどう
benefits
いう形でしていったらい
be
いのかなというのは、そこはまだまだすごく
outlined so
難しい
that
ところかなというふうに思っています。
people who have to bear that
あ
would
りがとう
think
ご
it
ざい
makes
ます。
sense.
西
Thank you.
本先生は挙手は。
いえいえ、ごめんなさい。
So
早
Nishimura,
く
were you
早
raising
く
your
ったら
hand there?
思わず押してしまいました。
Actually, no, I
あり
just
がとう
pressed
ご
it
ざい
by
ます。
mistake.
ではちょっと最後、も
Well,
う時
thank you
間も
very
迫
much.
ってきま
So
したので、最後一つ
time is running
お
out,
願いしたいと思う
but
んです
I
が、
would like
先
to
生た
ask
ち
one
まあ
question,
今
one
まで
last
研
question.
究者として NBS に取り
So
組ま
you
れ
have
ていら
been
っしゃってる
working
かと
on
思うんですが、
nature-based
今
solutions as
後どのような
researchers.
研究をす
And
る
in
必要があ
future,
る、ご自
what kind
分
of
でするにも
research
よ
do
って
you
です
believe
ね、
is
こう
necessary
いう
can be
質
researched that you
こ
would
う
like to
分
do
野、違
yourself
う分野で
or
こう
any
いう研
other
究が
discipline
必要だと
where you
感じていらっしゃ
feel
るのか、
certain
ちょっと
research
将
is
来に向かっ
necessary?
てこう
So
いう
could
ことに
you
注
give us some
目するこ
ideas
と
for
が
the
重要なんじゃ
future?
ないか
What
と
are
いうと
the
ころ
areas
を
that we
ご
should be
紹介い
focusing
ただ
on
ければと思い
or
ます。
paying
では
attention
西
to?
弘先生お願いします。
Dr. Nishihiro, could I
はい、ありがとうございま
ask
す。
you
ち
first?
ょっと2つ
Yes, thank
重視
you.
していることを
I
申し
have
上げます。
two
一つ
things that
は、
I think are
やは
important.
りこういう自然を
Number
活用
one
する
is
研究というのは、
when we're
地
working on
域に根ざし
research
た技
on
術ということが
nature-based
重
solutions,
要なの
the
で、やはり
technology
日
needs to
本
be
の
based in
場
the
合は日
local
本の気
area.
候とか自然
For
の特徴
Japan,
に
it
合わ
needs
せ
to
た
be
技術を
suited
作って
to
いくし、
Japan's
国によ
climate
ってみれ
and
ばその国に合
also
わせた技術を開発してい
local
くということ
conditions.
が重要にな
In
り
a
ます。
different country, you
特
would
に日
need to
本の場合
have
は
technology developed that
非常に
suits
こ
the
う降水
conditions
量
at
も
that
平均的
country.
に多くて気温も
Japan
高い
has a
国
lot
な
of
ので、
rainfall
植物の成長が非
and
常に
high
早い
temperatures.
というところでは、
Plants tend to grow fast.
いかにこう木は例えば樹木の伐採が常に悪いわけではな
And
く、
so cutting down
いかに
trees
効
is
果的に
not
伐採す
always
るかとかですね。
evil. You need
過
to think
去
of how
農地として
effectively
使わ
you
れて
can
いて
fell the
今
trees.
放棄されている
There
とこ
might
ろ
be
にいか
some
にこう手入れを
discarded
介入していく
farmland.
という人との
How
関
would
わ
you
りが非常
be
に
improving the
生
land
物
there?
多様性や生態系再
So
生
when
性重
thinking
要になっ
of
ていくので、その
biodiversity
関わりの技
and
術を
ecosystem
国際的に集めて
conservation,
開発
you
してい
really
くという
need
のは
to
とても重
think
要
of
になる
measures that are
というふう
suited
に
to
一
the
つは思っていま
conditions
す。
at
もう
the
一つ申し上げる
local
と、
area.
こういう社会実装
Another
の研
thing I would
究
like to
は
mention is that
進める上
research
で
on
は
social
この研究がな
implementation
くなった後にどんな社会が残るのかという
needs
ところ
to
がとても重要
consider
になるの
what
で、
would
例え
be
ば資
left
金メ
in
カニズムを自
society
律
after
的に
research is
してい
over.
くためにはどう
We
し
need
た
to
らい
have
い
a
かというのを
sustainable
我が研究
autonomous
を
kind
始
of
め
a
る前
funding
の初期の段階から
mechanism
考え
in
ていただ
place.
きたい
So
の
we
で、
also need to
その
start
ようにですね、
thinking
自立し
about
た
that from the
資金
initial
とか体
stages
制
of
の仕組
research,
みを作っていくということ
having
が今後重視すべきかな
an
というふうに
autonomous
思
and
っております。
independent kind of
以上
a
です。
structure, sustainable
わか
structure
りま
for
した。
funding and
で
other
は、茅野
activities.
先生お願いします。
Thank you, Dr. Kayane.
サ
Can
バ
I
礁
ask
修
you
復に
next?
ついては、技
Yes,
術
for
としては、
restoring the
日本は
coral
もう
reefs,
すでに20年以上、
Japan
この
already
サバ礁
has
種苗生産につい
20
てはウェルスの
years
技術を
of
進めてきてるんですね。もちろんですからまだ
breeding
100%と
and
は言えない、
nursing
まだやる
the
ことはた
coral
くさんある
reefs.
んです
The
が、まあ、
technology
そういう意味
has
で
yet
は
to be
我が
established.
国
There's a
が
lot
先導
still
的
to
に進めて
do,
きた技術を、
but there have
評価し
been
つつ、
technologies
広げていき
that
たいと思い
Japan
ま
has
す。
been
で、
working
欧
on.
米
We'd
で
like
は
to assess that and
長
work
ら
on
くその
brushing them
サ
up.
ンゴ礁の修
And
復、まあ、
in
生態系の修
the
復なん
Western
てのは
countries,
とても人間の手ではできないことですの
ecosystem
で、まあ、サン
restoration
ゴ礁
was
につい
long
ては
thought to be something
コンサベー
that
ションマ
was
ネ
too
ージメ
much
ン
for
トが、まあ、彼らの合言
humankind
葉
to
で、
manage.
保全と管理ですね。
So
で、我
conservation
々
and
が国際
management
会
used
議
to
で
be the
サンゴ
main
礁修
things.
復につい
And
て発
when
表す
we
ると、
talk about
まあ、
coral
批
reef
判されたり、
restoration in
まあ、そんな
international
ものは開
conferences,
発
we
の
would
目先
actually
の
get
課題だっていう
criticized
ふう
and
に言わ
saying
れて
that
ますよね。
we were
ただそ
providing
れが
excuses for
2016
development.
年に、
But in
3回目か
2016,
4回目の大
in
規
the
模な
third
サン
or
ゴの
fourth
大規模な閉止が起こって、それまで彼らが保全してきた
major
グレートバリア
coral
リー
reef
フが
death,
半
the
分ぐら
Great
い消滅
Barrier
して、
Reef,
それ以来
lost about half of the
2017年ぐら
coral
いからポロッと
there.
彼
And
ら
then from
合言葉が変わって、
2017,
コンサベーション
the
マネジメ
keyword
ント
has
から
changed
イン
from
ターベンション
conservation
レストレーション、もう
management.
人
It's
間
now
は木を
intervention
伐
and
採すれば何でも修
restoration.
復できるんだって、
No,
そんな方向に変
humans
わっ
can
てるっぽいです。
intervene in order
で、
to
彼ら決
restore
して
everything.
我々
So
のこれ
there's
まで
been
の
a
失敗
drastic
も含
change
め
in
た、
direction.
さま
So
ざまなそうい
including
う
our
のを、まあ、
past
言ってみましょ
mistakes,
うね。これ世界
etc.
で初めてサン
No,
ゴ
I
を増
think
やしたんだみたいなこと言ってるんですが、
no,
そ
we're
の人た
saying
ちが
that
こう
we're
日本
one
が
of the
これまで
first
作ってきた技術を
people
海外に展開していくという
to
ことをしていきたいと思っています。そ
really
の上ではも
restore
ちろん
corals, but
その
we
技術を
want
さら
to
に
really
効率的
expand understand that technology, and we need to preserve the technology. And also, as mentioned earlier, the socioeconomic consensus building is also going to be very important.
どうもありがとうございます。技術の使い方みたいなところも
Thank you
だい
very
ぶ
much.
昔
So,
から
usage of
変わっている
technology has been changing from the past, seems like, as Dr. Nishihiro mentioned. So, you're not using technology first or engineering first, but then you're using engineering technology later after the local assessment. So, the way of understanding and the way of people's recognition, I think Japanese engineering technology will be related to a more better way of responding. And Dr. Saito, please. Yes, there's many assessment from the Nexus side, and including all the cases. We would like to accumulate the actual case that was delivered, and then we will like to generate this into the next nexus to make a newer response options. So the coordination of the biodiversity is important, and it has to be coordinated and organized. However, maybe if it becomes too generic, then it will be not usable. Therefore, linking to the local reality, and we should be able to make the concepts being usable to the local areas. So in the next project, the next stage of the project, we would like to actually hold a workshop in order to how to implement the Nexus within the local area and with the understanding of the local people, and to be able to utilize it practically. So just 2 weeks ago, we had a similar type of event at Tottori, and then we reported on the Nexus reporting, and then we introduced about what we do at the community level. And then we discussed what is going to be the challenge and the way forward for the Nexus context. So in order to drop in or drop down the concept into the practical area, we would like to create some guide-like document, but along with that, we're working on the research for SDGs and making the attainment for the targets. And we will be having the business science report come out too. Therefore, as Dr. Nishihiro mentioned, we could be restoring natures by the coordination with the businesses, or else maybe improve the Lexus. Therefore, such an initiative, I do expect that is going to be vigorizing the whole activity. Thank you very much. And listening to the doctors, we do find some common challenges. For instance, we have to be indicating the appropriate land. We have to be working on appropriate indicators. And then what is it all about in order to work from the site area, which is from the community? And we would like to dive in more. However, unfortunately, our time is up. Therefore, we would like to conclude this session. So thank you. With the cooperation of the doctors, we were able to share a lot of knowledge about NBS towards solving the climate change problems. And companies and other actors' roles are now emergingly becoming important going forward in order to solve the challenges Japan and Asia. And so Japan and Asia are taking strong steps towards a sustainable future. And I hope that this will continue to progress. To all the participants, thank you so much for your participation. We would like to conclude the discussion. And thank you, doctors, for your great cooperation. So Dr. Yamanoshita and Dr. Saito, Dr. Kayane, and Dr. Nishihiro, thank you very much for the panel discussion. And once again, it is online, but then I would like you to make a great applause to the panelists and the MCs. And with this, this concludes the thematic meeting hosted by ERCA, ISAP 2025, National Implementation and Current Status of Nature-Based Solutions, NBS, to address climate change issues. With that, this marks the end of all ISAP 2025 sessions. We'd like to thank everyone who participated in and watched numerous sessions, including the general meeting on July 29th. Videos of the session and others will be uploaded to the ISAP 2025 website and the IGES YouTube channel. So we hope that anyone who was unable to watch on the day will check them out. And we would also like to ask for your cooperation in filling out the survey that will appear after you exit Zoom. And so thank you very much for your cooperation. And thank you all for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. Thank you very much. And you'll be able to exit by clicking the exit button.